Hi, I'm Mary Maranville, and it's August, and I'm here in the beautiful Sexton Canyon with R.A.Atmore of R.A.Atmore and Sons. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you, Mary.
Good to see you again.
Thanks for coming up. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's my understanding that you are a lifelong resident of Ventura County.
I've lived in Ventura County since the 4th grade. My father was born in Santa Paula. My family came to Ventura County in about 1860, and our family's been here ever since. They started off in Fillmore, raising some cattle on the Sespe area, and like I said, my parents were both school teachers. I went to work on this ranch here in 1979, and I've been here ever since.
Both school teachers, that's wonderful. So education must be important to them and to you as well.
Absolutely.
And what is it that you love about Ventura County? What do you, when you think of the place where you live in this picturesque area, what is it that you love about this county so much?
The first thing I remember about agriculture in Ventura County was driving through Santa Paula and seeing the signs that said we were the citrus capital of the world. And I was so impressed with the fact that Ventura County was centered around agriculture. And I've loved it my whole life. You know, when I was young, my dad was in the military, so we lived a few other places, but Ventura County's always really been my home. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I went to school here, I grew up here, my friends are here, but most importantly, I love this community. We're next to the ocean, we've got rich agricultural valleys, so it's really a great place to live if you love the agricultural industry, and that's what we like.
Mm-hmm. And so not only do you love agriculture, but you're involved in it in every aspect. Anytime I go to any event or function that has to do with agriculture, you are there. And what specifically, how are you involved? I know you raise cattle, obviously, and so how many head do you have?
Well, it varies from year to year. We're on a ranch that's about 7,000 acres. We run a holistic management practice. It's divided into 16 pastures. We typically, on the average year, run about 350 mother cows. So we run a cow-calf business, which means we keep a steady herd of cows, we breed them with our own bulls, and the calves are the product that we sell every year. But typically, our cow herd runs at 300 mother cows, 300 to 350.
Wow, that's a lot.
And this year we're in a drought year. So like any other industry, we have to cut back or deal with the constraints that we're dealt with. So this year we're in a severe drought. We've probably cut the herd down to about 140 head, and we may even dip down a little below that to deal with this drought because we can't afford to overgraze the pastures. And so we have to regulate the size of the herd with the amount of feed we get every year. And we're dependent upon annual rainfall to produce grasses that the cattle convert into beef.
So reducing your herd, it's a lot to do with the drought, but also economic factors because you can't afford to buy the feed that's necessary to handle the amount of livestock that you have.
Correct. I mean, you can't put $1,500 worth of feed into an $800 cow and make it come out economically at the end of the year. So you reduce your herd, you supplement, you let your calves get big enough that they can get on their own and you can sell those calves and do what you can to keep as much of the herd together. We're hoping to keep at least 75 to 100 head throughout the year, this year, so that when we buy back, we'll have a core part of the herd that'll be able to teach the others where to go.
Now, what part of the year will you start buying back? When the rain starts coming again? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're not going to predict if it's going to rain next year. We're going to wait till it rains, and we're going to see what that annual grass is doing, and then we're going to buy back cattle accordingly.
So around December, January, February, you'll start?
We'll be looking at things in January and February.
Okay. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that you get the rain that you're looking for. I believe last year they said on an annual basis we get about 19 inches on average, and this year we got about 8. Is that correct?
Actually, this year we were closer to 6.
Okay.
Right here in this part of the county. And it's not just the amount of rainfall you get, it's sequence and timing of that rain. We had some early rains and a dry up period. So the grass that germinated died. And then we had another set of rain and other sets of grass tried to germinate. The same cycle happened again. And we were looking for late follow-up rains that we really never got.
Okay.
So we probably had about 15% of our normal feed this year.
Okay.
We might have got 40% of our normal hydrology, but we ended up with like 15% of our normal feed because of the timing and sequence of the low rainfall.
That is a huge difference. So again, I hope that we get the rain that you need to keep your livestock healthy and going and sustainable. And this is very interesting for me because I grew up on a dairy farm in upstate New York, and the differences between raising cows and having a cow-calf operation here and there are two totally different animals, no pun intended. So,
absolutely. You know, in this particular habitat right here, these hills have two directions. You look around, everything's steep, the directions are up and down. It's pretty dominated by coastal sage scrub. The cattle really don't eat the woody species, so we manage those woody species so we can have both habitat diversity and that's rangeland management. And so by managing the brush, we create more room for grasses. And right now, with our current carrying capacity, it's about 30 acres per animal unit. So every 1,000 pounds of beef that you have out in the hills, it takes about 25 to 30 acres to support them through the year.
So 25 to 1 acres to cow.
Yes, 25 acres to one animal unit, basically one cow.
One cow.
You know, and that's in the normal year. So this year with the drought year, it's going to be a lot higher. It's going to be like 75 or 80 acres for each animal unit, if not more.
What an interesting statistic or ratio. I never knew that, so thank you.
So it's really important that you manage the herd accordingly because not only the cattle, but we all live off this land. And it's the most important thing is providing the stewardship. And you have to take care of the habitat because as rangeland stewards, we're responsible for the wildlife carrying capacity of the land, for protection of the watershed. Erosion doesn't help the community down below and it doesn't help us up here. So it's really necessary for us to manage things that's holistically good for the whole ranch. We have to take a holistic approach and look at the health of the entire ranch, not just the ecosystem, the animals, the wildlife, and the cattle. And by doing anything that would harm the grasses, we're really hurting ourselves down the line because we're dependent upon those grasses. And if we hurt the seed stock, the seeds that we need for the grasses next year and the year after, who are we really hurting? We're just hurting ourselves.
Right. So R.A.Atmore and Son, what would you say your #1 mission or your mission is? What do you spend your day doing most of the time? And I know it depends on the time of year, but say right now in the month of August, what are you working on?
Well, this year we're working a little bit harder than normal on feeding cattle and supplementing the natural feed that they have left and putting out supplement. We buy rangeland blocks that are basically a molasses-based protein block that helps give them extra energy, rotating cattle around more than ever. So and we've gone through a sales process. So we're constantly bringing cattle in, evaluating them, preg checking them, getting rid of the ones that it's time to sell now, and there's some that it's time to sell 2 months from now. So we're really going through that process of bringing a lot of cattle in. Plus, like a lot of other cattle ranchers in the community, we have to do some other things to supplement our income besides just cattle. Because obviously you can't make a living off 100 head of cattle, and it's really even difficult off 300 head of cattle. So for ourselves, we learned so much about habitat restoration out here and taking care of the habitat that the county and other entities have hired us to help them provide stewardship over some of the habitat that they have.
Oh, wonderful.
So
okay.
we do a little bit of that, but we do a lot of taking care of the cattle, and we kind of tie it all together. So, whatever management practice we do, we always use prescribed grazing afterwards. And down below, we just supplement that with guys cutting weeds or managing invasive weeds. And
Weed abatement.
Weed abatement. And that's a big part of out here because we have to manage invasive weeds. A couple hundred years ago, they didn't have a lot of invasive weeds they had to deal with. But today, there's invasive weeds that come in with pipeline companies or just trucks that come in to work in the oil fields. So we have to constantly be looking for any new plants that might, disturb the habitat out here.
Okay. And you just mentioned sales, and I had the pleasure of going to the Ventura County Fair on Friday and witnessing for the first time the 4-H livestock auction, and it was a huge success. Can you talk about a little bit about your involvement with that?
Oh, absolutely. Throughout the years, we've always supported the kids down at the Ventura County Fair. And there's local groups here in town, which is 4-H and FFA, and there's the Grange group. And kids throughout the county have an opportunity to get involved with animal husbandry by raising an animal to show at the fair and eventually sell at the auction at the fair. So these kids, earlier in the year, either get a pig or, a sheep or a goat, or they raise a steer or a bred heifer, and they take care of it all year long, or for the majority of the year, and they put it on their own feeding program. They exercise it, they train it to they halter break it, and they work with it day in and day out, and eventually leading up to the day when they go to the fair to show their animal in the livestock show. And they place the different participants, and then there's awards given for that placement. And then on the last Friday of the fair, they have the livestock auction. It's a big event here in town, and a lot of local businesses, both agriculture and non-agricultural businesses, come out to support the kids. And it's really the highlight of the entire fair. And like my boy George, he's 14 and he raised a steer for the fair this year. So he worked hard with the steer. He exercised the steer a horseback out here in the hills, and he took it down to the auction, and he ended up getting $6.50 a pound for a steer, which is probably about 8 times what we get for a steer that we sell just off the range.
Wow.
But he had a lot of money into feeding it. I mean, he probably had a couple $1,000s worth of grain and hay into feeding it. Plus he worked real long and hard with it.
And you just hope that the kids use the money for their education.
Absolutely.
To go to college, to buy books, good, they're doing good with the money on their side. And also the cattle actually goes to food share, correct?
I understand that this year 65% of the animals that were sold at auction at the fair went directly to food share.
Okay.
And we're really lucky to have great supporters at the Ventura County Fair, like the Wood Clayson's Foundation. They bought a tremendous amount of animals at the fair, and they kind of set the bar and set the price so that they make sure all the kids get a decent price on their pigs or their goats or their steers. And then sometimes other people outbid them or add on to the kids' price, but then that meat's all donated that Wood Clayson's buys.
Any way you look at it, it's a win-win-win situation. Food share gets some, the kids get some, the people that are hungry in our county are, taking advantage of it as well, so it's all good stuff.
It's win-win-win. They go and donate to the kids, and then they donate to food share to feed hungry people throughout Ventura County.
And not only that, it was a fun day, and the positive energy that's generated by all this philanthropy and the cause makes everyone feel wonderful. And a few more questions.
Absolutely.
You are also known in the county as the Love Wrangler, and what does that mean exactly, Richard?
Well, I'm glad to see you're well read.
I pay attention and I listen.
Actually, there was a point in time when the Ventura County Star came out and did some articles, and I had 2 cowboys working here at the time, and one was Pete Cater and the other cowboy was Brad Haley. And so they decided they were going to do an article on what 3 average Joes off the street thought about love and relationships. So they came out and asked us questions, and we gave them off-the-wall kind of cowboy rhetoric answers. And I guess they thought it was funny because instead of finding 3 plumbers or 3 mechanics the next time, they kept coming back here every month, and they did the article for about a year. It was a lot of fun, and we had fun with it.
What can you tell us about love and relationships? What advice can you give the average single man out there in Ventura County?
Well, the kind of questions used to come in were, I'll give you a typical question that used to come in. It was like, dear Love Wranglers, my husband's been overseas, with the armed forces for the last 8 months, and he's coming home this weekend. What should I wear? Signed, Lonesome Navy Wife. And we would just say, dear Lonesome Navy Wife, try barbecue sauce. So it was all just humor and rhetoric, and it really had nothing to do with serious relationships. Because actually, what did 2 single guys and a divorced guy really know about love and relationships?
Well, you know something.
Absolutely.
That was great advice.
We know what not to do.
Yes. And you are also a big supporter of many causes, and I'm having a dinner coming up, and you donated to my dinner, and I just wanted to thank you so much. It means a lot to me. You obviously, ag education is important for our youth in the county. They're getting so much out of it. They're learning so much. So thank you for donating to my cause. And one last thing, we've got some gorgeous horses in our midst. And how many horses do you have on the property?
We have about 8 horses here. I mean, sometimes we're horse traders like any other cattle rancher, but right now we have 8 horses, and all our horses are quarter horses. They're all set up for the work. Just like the cowboys 200 years ago, there's really only one way in these steep hills to gather the cattle, and that's a horseback. So the horses here on the ranch are one of the most important tools that we have to do our work to process the cattle. So we have to use them to bring the cattle in, to separate the cattle, to hold the calves still while we vaccinate them or do different animal husbandry practices. Without the horses, we could not do our job here. So they're one of the most important tools we have. You have to have good horses, because any horse that'll hurt itself will darn sure hurt you. So we really take pride in our horses. And it's an important part of it.
And you also use them for a little bit of recreation as well. I believe you went on the Ranchero ride in May. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. I've been lucky enough to be indoctrinated into Rancheros Visitadores, which is a group that gets together every year up in the San Ynez Valley. It's been that ride's been sponsored since 1930, and there's about 1,000 guys that go up to that ranch, and they're ranchers and different people from the community throughout California.
And diplomats and dignitaries?
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's really an honor to be involved with that group, and that group does a lot of good things to help people. And
you raised money for cancer, correct? How much money was raised?
Yeah, this year I think they raised about $250,000 for breast cancer, and that's a huge deal. And actually, every year we go up and have one camp in San Ynez, and we have a big ride on Sunday, but Saturday afternoon we all ride to the mission and have a ceremony. And this year there was about 650 cowboys that rode through town.
Wow, what a sight.
And Wrangler sponsored every one of them with a pink Wrangler shirt. So you see 650 guys on horseback with pink Wrangler shirts on, you know they're not afraid to wear pink.
I think I'm going to go to the parade next year. I don't want to miss that. And thank you again. And if anybody wants to learn more about your weed abatement program or your natural resource programs, how would they find you? Where would they go?
You know, they could just visit our website at just R.A.Atmore.com.
Okay, perfect. And thank you so much for taking the time out today to speak with me.
You bet. We always like trying to educate kids on what we do, because it's absolutely apparent that everybody know that beef doesn't come from bonds. Beef comes from producers like us. The average herd in California is 50 head. Whether you got 50 or 500, you're a beef producer, and we want to let you know what we do and how we take care of our habitat and environment.
It's wonderful. Thank you. We all like a good steak, don't we? Thank you, and see you again next month in September.